Hey everyone, welcome to Balanced Bodybuilding Radio and episode 4. I am your host, Lee Marie. I'm a Glam Girl Bikini coach and NPC competitor, and I'm here with my coach and my co host.
Hey guys, it's Amy Inger, founder and CEO of Glam Girl Bikini.
And episode 4, we want to talk about balance. What does balance mean, and what does it mean to have balance in a lifestyle of health and fitness? But first, we want to do our random question of the day. And today's question is, do you have any non-fitness related hobbies? What are your hobbies that aren't fitness related?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm super into tennis right now.
But
And
that's fitness.
what's up?
That's fitness. Isn't that fitness? Is that not fitness?
Oh, okay. I thought you meant just like bodybuilding.
Oh, gotcha. I gotcha.
Yeah, because
Okay.
it's definitely a hobby that's like not related to bodybuilding at all. And it's something I just picked up in the last 6 months, but I just started playing like competitively. So I feel like it's a new hobby. Or like
Did
a
you
life.
win something recently?
Yeah, I just won my second. Well, won both of my singles matches in USTA. So that was pretty exciting. But yeah, okay. So non-fitness related, as far as like non-sportsy, man, that's gonna be. You can come
I
back
know,
to
right?
me on that one because my other hobbies are like watching my kids' sports. My son's baseball, and then I used to coach my daughter's volleyball. But again, those are still sports. So I'm going to have to come back to you. So you go ahead and answer the question.
Okay, so I used to be super into music, and recently I started playing piano again. I have this little keyboard, and so I hadn't in years. I used to play piano like really good, like classical. Like I used to be really good, but I'm not like that anymore. But I found a little keyboard that was at my parents' house, and I brought it back to my house, and I can sit down and play, and just like hours go by, and I just forget about everything. And so that's a hobby I picked up again. I feel like you read a lot.
Yeah, that's what I was actually going to say when you got back to me. Because once I thought about it, I'm like, I'm a total nerd. I'm like just education type of person.
Yeah.
So yeah, my most recent thing, I've just been trying to read something every night, and they're usually like self-help books. So I do also listen to a lot of audio, but I actually physically read at night so that I'm not looking at a screen or having like headphones in. I like to have the pages of a book. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's
That's
my
actually
recent thing.
really good example of balance in our life. I feel like I'm always looking at a screen. And so to actually hold a paper book and read, especially at night, that is something that I need to start doing.
It's my wind down routine. While I foam roll, I read. So yeah, I've kind of switched from, we used to read to my kids and now they're just teenagers, so they don't care about reading books with us. So yeah, I just find my own, but it's definitely helped with my personal growth. And I feel
Mhm.
like whenever you strengthen your mindset like that, it's really beneficial in all areas of your life. So
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Okay, so diving into our topic, I looked up the definition of balance. I wanted to define it, and two of the examples really jumped out at me when it comes to health and fitness and finding balance in health and fitness. So, one of them defined balance as a condition in which different elements are equal or in the correct proportion. And then the quote is, try to keep a balance between work and relaxation. And I think I kind of thought about nutrition in this kind of area, trying to make sure the elements are equal or in correct proportions, if we're thinking about like the 80-20 rule or 90-10, and trying to keep a balance between the healthy side of things and the fun side of things. And then the other example that I saw was offset or compare the value of one thing with another. So the quote is, the cost of obtaining such information needs to be balanced against its benefit. So weighing the cost versus the benefit. And I thought about like training or nutrition, and especially with nutrition, how we do have to give up certain things. It could be training or nutrition, I guess, give up certain things, but it's for something else that we have value in. So if we have the goal of weight loss, we might give up, Friday night drinks every Friday night for a period of time, or, we might give up going out to eat every day for a period of time because we're balancing that against the value of getting healthier, losing some weight, feeling better. So those were my two examples. And then I also thought about we had an original logo for the podcast that we had scales. And I
Mhm.
really loved that picture of the scales. And I feel like with balance, especially in nutrition, fitness, health and fitness, you really are balancing two extremes. And so you're balancing your discipline and you want to balance your flexibility. And so always kind of finding the balance of how those two fit together in, for you specifically for your lifestyle. So what are your thoughts on those?
Yeah, when you just actually mentioned the part about Friday night drinks. So the old Amy, the black and white Amy, would have said no to friends and going out on Friday nights. But the new balanced Amy would say, I'm still going to go out on Friday night. I'm still going to hang out with my friends, but I'm going to have a club soda and a lime versus maybe like a tequila water or a glass of wine. So the old me would have said no to the social aspect because I don't know, my mindset just wasn't in a good place. I thought it was just like an all or nothing, turn on a switch, turn it off. And same with the going out to eat. So I go out to eat all the time. I'll just bring my little cooler purse with my whatever my lean protein is. When I'm on strict prep, I go out to dinner all the time with my friends because I like spending time with them, eating with them. That's an activity they like to do. So I'll just get plain lettuce and I'll throw my meat on top of it. And I mean, I know it kind of breaks a little bit of the health codes, but I've never had anybody say anything to me yet. And I just feel like it's something that's important for me to not lose my friendships because of a choice that I'm making. So I wanted to give, just because I've been doing this for so long, I wanted to give some examples of what extreme Amy used to be like unhealthy, not balanced
Mm-hmm.
at all. And if you don't mind, I think like the bad extreme
Yeah.
in contest prep would look like. So my first contest prep, I actually, it was 12 years ago. So she never had me check in. She gave me a packet of paper and at about like, I don't know, it was like a 12-week program basically. And I just followed this packet, really had no bearing on how I was progressing or anything because she wasn't taking progress. It was all set ahead of time. And I remember the first week, fruit got taken out completely. So I was like, not allowed to eat fruit. And then by the end of it, it got to be that I was eating asparagus and tilapia at literally every meal for breakfast. Can you imagine eating fish? You probably know why I don't ever eat fish or asparagus now. And
Oh, wow.
keeping that like fresh and just palatable is just really difficult to do. And so you can imagine how much of the tipping scale I weighed very heavily on an extreme diet, very limited in nutrients, very limited in food choices. So you can imagine what post show looked like. It was the scale just flipped the other direction because I was so deprived. And I mean, I remember crawling up my stairs, just thinking I was an athlete. So I thought, this is what I have to do. This is what I've got to endure. I've got to do 90 minutes of running every day. And because that's what she's telling me I have to do. And I was so thin and so frail by the end of it. It wasn't I mean, I was surprised I actually ever ended up competing again after it. So when bikini came out, I had done figure in that circumstance. And I was like, okay, this is a completely new division. I'm going to get a completely different coach and experience. And I'm going to give it one more try the next year. And then I ended up loving it because the plans had more variety, and they were constantly changing, and it was a little bit it was a little bit more gray. I would say over the years, it's taken a lot of time for my mindset to shift. And then for me to understand that, there's different strategies and methods to get there, but you really don't need to be canceling out food groups and things like that. That's way too extreme, and it is not balanced at all. So
Mhm.
that's, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at with like my extreme example. I know you've been, very short amount of time in this world, but as far as like just from a lifestyle perspective, going from, never being in sports and things like that, what would you say, because you didn't start your fitness journey with bodybuilding. Was there anything that you had that you felt like was extreme and that you've been able to incorporate more balance recently?
Yeah, so I did not start out competing. I was not in sports, like you said, but I remember the very first diet that I went on. And so I was like totally on the lifestyle side of things. And I think I was probably in my late teens. I think it was like right before I graduated high school and I wanted to lose some weight. And my mom had actually, she used to work at like a nutrition center, and they had this diet plan, and she was like, oh hey, I still have this plan somewhere, I'll find it for you and I'll do it with you. And she was always down to do stuff. And my mom is like naturally the picture of balance growing up. Like she always prioritized healthy foods and things, but then she would have fun things and it just wasn't a big deal for her. And so she was like, I'll just do it with you. And so we went on this plan, and it was one of those so strict plans. I think there was 2 proteins a day. There wasn't really any carbs. There was like a list, and one of the protein options was 3 hard-boiled eggs. So I would do that every single day because I could split them up into more meals. So I went for like, I don't know, a month or a month and a half on this. And I would eat 3 hard-boiled eggs a day, and then I'd have a chicken breast. And I remember you could eat 2 pieces of fruit, and I would always pick apples because I would just like, I was not weighing or measuring anything. I would pick the biggest apples I could find.
That sounds like something I
And
would do.
yeah, it was for like more of extreme weight loss. It was like the nutrition center she worked at, they had like supplements they would give them and things like that, but I don't have any of that. So I lost a lot of weight and I got really skinny. But I had no concept of like when I went off the diet, I didn't know how to maintain it at all. And so it was like
Yeah.
all this, like you couldn't stop eating pretty much. And so then in my head, I thought, well, if I want to be, look good, I have to be super strict and super extreme and follow this diet. And then if I want to have fun, then I'm just not going to be like, I'm not going to like the way that I look or whatever. And there's always this like little bit of time right after you kind of finish the diet, you're at your goal weight. There's this little lag time where you're eating kind of whatever you want. And the weight hasn't caught up to you yet. But then I don't even know how I found out about my fitness pal. I think I must have read an article or something on I used to read articles on bodybuilding.com forum and stuff like that. But
Mhm.
I remember this whole tracking and flexible dieting thing, and I downloaded my fitness pal, just the free version, and I did whatever quiz it was for how much you wanted to weigh, and they gave me my calories, and I started entering things in, and I remember the first time I literally entered in and tracked a cookie, and I ate a cookie and like still hit my goals, and I was able to like maintain weight, and I think my calories were pretty low, but still I could fit things in, and it like
Yeah.
blew my mind and totally changed my perspective of I can actually eat whatever I want,
Mhm.
you know? And of course, you kind of go through the phase of, if you know, track your cookies, then, like you're going to run out of calories and still be hungry. So then it's like, then you learn how, well, most of the time, you're 80% of the time you want to be eating your chicken and your vegetables and your apples and things like that so that you can be full. Because I definitely had some days in the beginning where I was like, wow, I'm really hungry and I have no more calories left,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
you're doing that kind of a balance, but that changed the game for me. And that, like, I was like, wow, I can actually eat those things. They're not bad foods. And
Yeah.
I mean, even with prep, I've never had a bad coaching experience, thankfully. I've only
I'm glad to hear that since I've been your only one.
and then, but I've always had, like, you've always given me the meal plan and the macros. So it's like, and I think that was kind of the point of like bodybuilders when they first came up with the term flexible dieting, was that not necessarily you're, trying to fit in all these, Pop Tarts and cereal and ice cream every day, but it's like instead of having tilapia, 5 times a day, you could have chicken and turkey and some lean ground beef, and you can switch out your protein
Likewise.
sources, switch out your veggies, you have more variety. And so that's actually made prep, not too bad. Obviously, as your calories get lower in a prep, you got to be a little more picky about getting in your fiber and feeling full and things like that. But then in the improvement season or as a lifestyle, just like in a lifestyle cut, um, I would just be curious about, like you mentioned, like your strategies with going out to eat and like going out for drinks on prep. In an improvement season or like lifestyle, how do your strategies change in those circumstances with like going out to eat?
Yeah, I think it depends on that's a really good question. So which phase of the journey you're in. So if you're reversing out of a show, or if you have a refeed meal that's calculated, or you have a free meal. I always hate the word cheat meal. It makes me cringe every time. I remember my
Yeah.
second coach always gave us a cheat meal, and similar to your find the biggest apple. Well,
Yeah.
this was like crazy. I mean, there was no rules around what the cheat meal had to be. So of course I went probably ate my weight in calories for the whole week, in that one meal. So where was
Yep.
the progress? Not really there. So I think having a little bit of structure, I've had many different coaches and many different experiences in the improvement season. Sometimes mentally you need a free meal that's not tracked because you don't want to get burnout from tracking all the time, especially when you have that bigger budget. I think Dr. Lane Norton kind of explained it the best in his very early, it was a long time ago that he had a podcast where he talked about, okay, if you have a like a budget, if you think about your calories like your budget, right? So let's just figure out it's money, right? So you have like $1 million, you can buy a Ferrari, but if you have, if all you have is like $20,000, you're not going to buy a Ferrari. You can't really afford that. So you think about your calorie budget and then what you can allow. So it just depends on where you're at with your personalized journey and where things fit into your season. So there's times when, I do a free meal. There's times when I calculate a refeed. It just depends on for everyone, right? It depends. So sometimes I can my budget's so high that I can fit in several meals going out to eat because my macros are really high. And then I wanted to mention too, his co-host, Sohee Lee, she was going for her pro card and she wanted to prove that she could have a Snickers every day. And she literally did it, but she was so mad at herself for trying to do this experiment because she's like 5 foot and she basically like all of her calories were in the Snickers bar and she would have rather had like a big salad with some chicken breast or something like that. So I think just finding that tipping point where what season you're in, what's appropriate at that time. And again, it'll be that scales, like things are gonna fluctuate on either end, but just kind of being smart about how you strategize and work it into like your long-term goal and making sure that's in alignment.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you mentioned too the dynamics of when you did your asparagus and tilapia prep, and then when you went off of that prep. Did you like, I don't know, like with that coach, did she take you through a reverse or anything like that afterwards?
No, I had no clue what I was even supposed to do. I mean, once the packet was done, and when you're in your first show, it's really hard because you it's so new to you and you don't know what you're supposed to be feeling. And so I just thought that that's like what everybody had to do. And then there was no even talk about next step goals or what I was supposed to do after the show, like if I was supposed to have like a celebration meal, like if I had a reverse diet. None of that was really around and it wasn't really a thing. So I mean, I gained 15 pounds the next day. I couldn't see my ankles. So it's just, yeah. I mean, luckily we've accelerated really fast in the sport in terms of technology being so at our fingertips so that we can get a lot better, like educated on how to select the right coach and things. If you listened to our episode last week, how to pick the right coach, there's definitely some good practices and there's some really bad ones. And luckily there's a lot of good people in the industry now, and there's a lot of information out there so that people like me that are looking for a first time coach, fortunately, that's not really the norm anymore. But yeah, it kind of goes into that whole clean eating, what even is clean eating, but that could be a whole another podcast that we talk about. But
Like,
yeah, I
I
think,
always think about it as like highly restrictive, you know? Like you have certain foods and you do not step out of that box,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. I mean, it could be, for a vegan, it could be eating meat. For, it's not like for traditionally in bodybuilding, it's basically eliminating like sugar and processed foods and things like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a whole nother episode we could probably do.
So, okay, here's another question. So, I have it in my notes. It says most competitors, and I don't even know if I want to say most, but a lot of competitors struggle without that show to prep for. So, let's go like past the recovery diet, past that, you get deep into an improvement season. So we're like as competitors, a lot of the time when you're in prep, you have those prep goggles on, right? And you are just focused on the show. You will do whatever it takes. And yes, we've grown a lot and we're a lot more flexible with things, but still, you have macros that you stick to and you have cardio that you stick to and you go to the gym all the time because you are always thinking about that stage. I'm always thinking about when I step on that stage, I want to know that I gave it my all, right? So when you're in an improvement season and you lose that show, that drive, what do you find? How do you find like yourself and for your athletes that the motivation to stay disciplined, but then also allow for that flexibility, if that makes
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. I've had several clients that they'll take a year, 2 years off, and we focus more on performance goals. So, like, how are your lifts going now that you have more energy and you have, either a maintenance calorie surplus or just a slight deficit for a recomp, depending on what that is, having that long term goal in mind and taking the judges' feedback and kind of focusing on the gym and engaging those muscle groups that really need to grow and kind of celebrating the fact that you can pour into your relationships a little bit more fully in terms of, you may not be taking as much time doing cardio, right? So you get time back maybe to spend with friends, with family, or doing some hobbies like reading or whatever it is, playing keyboard that you didn't have time to pour into because your time was so restricted before in terms of all the things that you have to do when you're really deep into contest prep. So I think, if you're a student, if you are an entrepreneur, if you're a career person, you can maybe also tip back a little bit more weight into those things and like improving your business or, building up your clients if you're an online coach, things like that, where you just have like a little bit different weight on the scale in other areas. And then when it comes time to prep, you just kind of turn up that dimmer switch on, you know, doing less of those things maybe and a little bit more focus on that end goal. But I do think they still need an ultimate long-term goal as far
Mhm.
as that is concerned. Now, maybe they don't have a specific date, but it just helps like in the back of your mind to know like, hey, Sandy told me to grow my glutes and my shoulders. And so I need to fuel my body in order to be able to do this, to recover, to grow, to put on that muscle tissue. And yeah, I just think I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of where I feel like I stand.
I love that. And I love, like, for me, and I think a lot of competitors, I do really good with a goal. And so I mean, if I have a show, I know the show is my goal, and my goal is leaning out, right? Maintaining as much muscle as I can, but leaning out. So losing body fat to get down to that goal. So in the off season or improvement season, I would take like my feedback and then I try to break it down into actual tangible goals because, like, in my head, yes, my goal is to put on muscle size all over, but I need a goal that I can actually see happen. So in my head, I'll give myself these little like PR goals in the gym. Like, I
Hmm.
want to, by the end of this month, I want to be able to lift this much, or this much. And I know that like that's all going to be personal and it's not as much about the number that you're lifting as, sets, reps, muscle activation, that type of thing, your intensity with bodybuilding. But it helps me to see like myself progressing even like month to month in an off season. And then I do kind of think that way a little bit with my calories too. I am not one that can eat a ton of calories. And so I feel like if I can just get my calories up a little bit higher, like the goal switches, like the higher I can get it, the more I have to start with. So, like, little tangible goals like that for an improvement season kind of help me really keep my drive when I don't have a show to prep for. And so I think that could be even like a lifestyle thing too. If we a lot of the time when we're in like a just like a weight loss phase or something, if we're a lifestyle client, to just focus on the scale is sometimes not helpful because it might go down this week, it might not go down this week. You might be body like recomping, so you might be putting on muscle, your inches might go down or they might not. And so having little goals like lifting a little bit heavier in the gym or nailing your macros, being perfect this week, things like that. Or I don't know if you have any other goals that you kind of set to keep yourself motivated.
Yeah, I do DEXA scans. I try to do them quarterly or I try to do them like at the beginning of when I'm starting a cut. So I can kind of see over the improvement season, how much muscle did I gain
Mhm.
and where is my composition. And I mean, Fit 3D scans are a great way to in-body scans, stuff like that, where if you're recomping, you can look at your inches, you can look at your pictures as well, but there's just different measurements and different metrics when it comes to an improvement season. But being
Mhm.
able to measure whatever we want to achieve, we need to make sure we're measuring it and being consistent with that data so that we can see, you know, in a season of growth, like, are we growing? And is that actually, being productive?
Yeah.
Another analogy I like to think of is like tanks of gas. So during prep, you're kind of like pedal to the metal, you're draining the tank of gas that's, you're doing so much cardio, like you're pulling from that tool, right? So it's like draining that tank. And then you're pulling from your calories. So you're putting yourself in a pretty severe deficit. So you're draining that tank. And in the improvement season, we want to like fill those tanks back up. So when it comes to cardio, slowly lowering it so that we're not using that gas. So we have all that gas to like pull from when we actually go to lean out. And then same with the calories, like you were saying, like really building that up, flexing our metabolic muscle so that when it comes time to cut, we have something to pull from. The biggest thing is, are we having something to pull from? So you got to think too, if the scale is really not changing and your inches aren't changing, but you're eating more calories and you're doing less cardio, that's actually a win. And I don't think a
Mhm.
lot of people see that. And I've had that several times with clients where they're like, I am just not changing. I am so frustrated. I'm like, yeah, but you went from 1,300 calories to 1,900 calories and you've maintained your body weight. That's a huge win in the metabolism world.
Mhm.
Same with like if you were doing 40 minutes to an hour of cardio, now you're doing 0, but you're still weighing the same. That's a huge win because you're setting yourself up for a much better prep. And then also just, you're helping your metabolism so much and you're allowing your body to grow versus like breaking down your muscle tissue when you're doing a bunch of cardio.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's a great point to end on too, because it refers back to our last episode. But I really do think if you're trying to maintain balance with a health and fitness goal or as a competitor, having a coach is so beneficial because that coach can also help you maintain that balance of, hey, we're still tracking, we still need to maintain structure, you have goals, but I want you to have a free meal, or hey, look at the progress we've made with your calories or taking your cardio down, and like kind of bringing you back to, hey, we are finding this balance between making sure that you can have a little more fun, flexibility in your life, but also making sure that we are headed towards those goals that you have in the future. So, little plug for coaching. If you did not listen to our episode last week, we went into how to, look for and find green flags in a good coach. So check that episode out. And check us out on Instagram. You can follow us at Balanced Bodybuilding Radio. And we are on YouTube. So check us out on the Glam Girl Coaching YouTube or Glam Girl Bikini. And if you want to apply for coaching as well, you can go to glamgirlbikini.com and hit the Get Started button. And that is all for today. Thank you so much for listening. I am your host, Lee Marie, and I'm here with Amy Anger, and we just really appreciate you guys listening.
Thanks for listening, guys.